Hey there guys, Carl here with TriloByte Studios. Today, we will once again be talking about the most infamous piece of paleo media to ever exist, Jurassic Fight Club.
They're the Earth's first fighters, the ultimate predators. New discoveries in forensic science bring to life the prehistoric art of war. This is Jurassic Fight Club.
So this video is meant to be a follow-up to my Why I Don't Hate Jurassic Fight Club discussion. So if you haven't seen that video, or that episode of TriloByte where Josh gives his thoughts about the series, I highly encourage you to go check it out. It'll give you a little bit more context and help you understand what position I'm coming from in this video. So I should preface this discussion by stating that in the original video, I never actually said I liked Jurassic Fight Club. I only said that I didn't hate it. The point here is that the series is absolutely atrocious, and it turns dinosaurs into little more than movie monsters that only exist to fight and kill each other. In this video, I'll actually be talking about a few of the things that I like in Jurassic Fight Club. Yes, I actually do like some aspects of the series. I know, it's an unpopular opinion. Quick, someone get the tar and feathers. Oh, I should also mention that Jurassic Fight Club is not a documentary series. I don't understand why some people think it is, and therefore judge it as a documentary. It's completely unfair. It has absolutely nothing to do with documentaries. Not even the wiki page claims it to be a documentary series. If anything, it's closer to a murder mystery series. So stop judging it like it's a documentary, because it's not and has never claimed to be. Anyway, I give you some things that I actually like about Jurassic Fight Club. Oh, I should also probably say that during this video, I'm going to be referring to Jurassic Fight Club as JFC, because Jurassic Fight Club is a mouthful to say over and over and over again. We'll kick things off with what I know will probably be the most controversial opinion in this whole video, and it is a completely subjective opinion. Don't worry, there will be objective opinions in this video too, but I want to get this one out of the way first. Okay, here it goes. The fights are entertaining.
Boo! You suck!
Wait. Just hear me out. I can explain. I'm a dude, and dudes tend to like explosions, loud fights, and, other things. Of course, that isn't every guy, but let's be real for a second. Guys are easily entertained. I mean, they did make 4 Transformers movies after all, and those movies have a primary demographic of young to adult males, and are literally just explosions.mov, but whatever. I genuinely think the fights in JFC are entertaining. The premise and the setup for the fights are still a bit outlandish, and a lot of the episodes it seems like a stretch. But the actual fight itself is fun to watch. Granted, that might just be because monkey-like fight, but I digress. Take the Deinonychus versus the Tintosaurus fight, for example. They show the Deinonychus stalking a herd of Tintosaurus. They cut a single one off from the rest of the herd, injure it, and stalk it for the rest of the day until nightfall when they're finally able to take it down from a combination of exhaustion and blood loss. This isn't too far off what some modern pack hunters actually do. Take wolves, for example. Wolves are known to injure a much larger prey species like bison, then, after exhausting it and inflicting massive damage to it, will track it for miles until it either dies from blood loss and exhaustion or is just too weak to fight back and the wolves finally take it down. Granted, JFC's execution of the fight is over the top, but it makes for good TV. Let's take a look at another one of the more popular episodes, and the one that I made fun of in my previous video. Cannibal Dinosaur, featuring Majungatholus. Majungasaurus. I'd be lying if I said this fight wasn't fun to watch. The way the episode sets it up really does build tension for the confrontation. The premise that 2 top predators in their environment have to duke it out is just cool, and the animation in this fight is probably some of the best in the series. Another plus for this episode is the model that they use for the model they use. Because the head model is actually pretty good. The rest of the body not so much, but the head is good. And that acts as a segue into the next thing I like about JFC. The animation. Currently, I'm part of a huge animation project on another YouTuber's channel, and watching the animation pipeline process from start to finish has been an amazing experience. It's given me a new perspective on just how much work goes into any animation. A lot of people like to point out the glaring incontinuities within each episode of JFC. Take the Megalodon episode, for example. The paleontologists state that Megalodon could reach 50 feet or more in length, and the narrator reiterates the information, only then later to say that Megalodon was the size of a jumbo jet. A bold statement considering a Boeing 747, the quintessential jumbo jet, has an overall length of 231 feet. So how do inconsistencies like this happen in the same episode? Who's to blame? The director? The writer? The editor? The paleontologists? Well, the answer is none of the above. What a lot of people fail to realize is that TV productions are heavily compartmentalized. It's not like the narrator met with the paleontologist before reading the script to double check the information. To be completely honest, the narrator was probably only in the studio for 2 or 3 days and recorded every episode in that time span. I doubt the animators and the storyboard artists ever consulted the paleontologist before boarding and animating a fight. Further, I highly doubt that the paleontologists consulted the research team and the concept artists who gave their designs to the animators. In truth, I believe the paleontologists were probably treated like the narrator, and only on set maybe 2 or 3 days. Just long enough to get their in-person shots, then were dismissed without ever seeing a script or a model of the animals that they were talking about. That's a very long-winded way of saying that I think the animation done on JFC is actually good. I think the animators did a fine job with the little information that they had, and tried to bring a realistic yet over-the-top eye-catching fight to audiences. Remember, CGI was still a relatively new technology in the TV industry at this point, and it was really expensive to use. Companies that weren't in the Hollywood movie industry still hadn't mastered it yet, and studios are always looking for the best value when taking a risk on a new project like JFC. Cut it some slack and enjoy the animation. Now that we've talked about the 2 more subjective things that I like about JFC, let's talk about an objective thing I like: the paleontology. Like I said in my previous video, the paleontology presented in JFC by the actual paleontologists is pretty good for the time. Sure, there are some mistakes and slips of the tongue here and there, but on the whole, at the time the information was given to us, it was actually pretty accurate. Take for example the episode T-Rex Hunter. This might be the single most accurate representation of Tyrannosaurus Rex up to this point in time. The model looks bulky, and it's a fairly accurate depiction, minus the pronated hands of course. But the cherry on top is that they talk about T-Rex's binocular vision, its enlarged olfactory sensor, its bite power, its teeth that were specially adapted to crush bone, and they even touched upon a new theory that was emerging during the time, the septic T-Rex bite. Now that might seem laughable by today's standards, but back then, it was pretty groundbreaking. And that's just the T-Rex. The Nanotyrannus is represented extraordinarily well. First, they distinguish it as a separate species, and that's a bold move at the time the series was being produced, which paid off and held up well. They talk about its environmental role, how it was almost a perfect blend of power and speed, and they even have a decent looking model of the animal to boot. Of course, every episode of JFC fails in its fights, but we'll take the victories where we can. Now this is a personal side note, but when I went back and watched some of the episodes, I got the feeling that the paleontologists were being forced to talk about some things that they themselves thought unlikely or just untrue. Let's take a look at this clip taken from the Utahraptor vs. Gastonia episode.
In nature today, predatory animals are very cautious about who they attack. For instance, a single lion will rarely, if ever, take on an animal as big as a water buffalo. Now, a pride of lions will certainly do it, but a lone lion usually won't unless they are in desperate need of food. Attacking something that can defend itself is not in the best interest of the attacker. So Utahraptor probably saw Gastonia on a daily basis, but it would think twice about attacking one unless it had no other choice.
Did you pick up on the weird vibes too, or was that just me? It really feels like the director or the producer kept pressing the question of how Utahraptor would attack Gastonia, or something along those lines. And Dinosaur George, God bless him, tried to give the best, most realistic answer he could by making the situation extreme, and explaining that predators normally don't attack prey that can defend themselves well, and they hardly ever do it alone. Further, he explains that paleontologists try to use logic and reason when attempting to recreate something like this, but instead of listening to George, the producers decided to twist his words to fit their narrative. Let's watch a bit more of the clip and you'll see what I mean.
The Utahraptor would normally have jumped on its prey's back. But against the armor-plated Gastonia, that would be useless.
A fight between these two animals could have happened 1,000 different ways. There are just too many variables to consider. So when we recreate a scenario, we try to use as much evidence and scientific fact as possible. We studied the prehistoric environments, we studied the skeletal design of the dinosaurs, and then other evidence so we can paint a realistic picture of what could have occurred. It's a combination of these factors that allows us to pose a realistic representation of what could have occurred.
This sort of work, from initial discovery to excavation and cleaning, reassembling, and final analysis, can take tens of thousands of man-hours. But the final result would be stunning.
Do you see what I mean? They glaze over what George said and try to direct the audience's attention back to the fight, and takes away the weight of what George just said. Consider George's perspective in the studio. He just said that a fight between these two would basically never happen, and really emphasized why it probably wouldn't, and that it's almost impossible to understand how it happened. Then he is immediately asked to give a plausible scenario, so he does, thinking that that will have less gravity than his previous statement. However, it doesn't, because now, unbeknownst to him, he's actually commentating the fight, which is supposed to be the most important part of each episode. Thus, it gives more gravity to this statement and the made-up scenario than it does to the actual science. It's another cheap editing trick to fool the viewers into believing the paleontologists backed the fight 100%. Now, a lot of people might be giving me some grief in the comments, saying, oh, you're giving too much credit to the paleontologists, they knew what they were doing. Well, I'm not saying that these paleontologists had no idea what they were getting into, and that they're infallible. But odds are, they had very little idea that what they were getting into, and simply tried to give the most accurate information that they could. That brings me to the last aspect of JFC that I actually like, and that is their usage of animals that have never really appeared in paleo media before. These include Albertosaurus, Archdodus, the extinct sperm whale, Deinonychus, Gastonia, Majungasaurus, Nanotyrannus, Pachyrhinosaurus, Panthera atrox, and of course Tintosaurus. Now, these obviously are not the most accurate representations of the animals, but I do like the effort they made in trying to spotlight some new species. Because they used so many new animals, they also inadvertently gave viewers a broad look at many eras of geologic time, not just the Mesozoic. So I say, give props where they're due, and appreciate the wide variety of species that were highlighted by JFC. Now we get to the meat and potatoes of the discussion, the conclusion. And with all that being said, some people may be wondering, Carl, do you actually like JFC? Do you really like Jurassic Fight Club? Are you about to tell us that you like Jurassic Fight Club and that you think it's a good series? And to that I have to say, oh fuck no.